Hey everybody, it's me, Steve Schnee, the CD Junkie. On this episode of CD Junkie, I want to talk about a band called the Rave-Ups. Now, we know that, the terms criminally underappreciated or underrated or overlooked, those are always going to be things we toss around. But yes, this is a band that some of you may already know, and I'll explain that in just a matter of moments. But they had something in singer-songwriter Jimmer Podrasky. They had a singer-songwriter with a unique voice. And when I say unique, he had, a way of phrasing things. So when you're listening to a Rave-Ups album from 1985, and then you're listening to maybe a Jimmer Podrasky solo album from, 20 years later, 25 years later, a very distinctive voice, and you can tell it's the same guy. And even though he's creating, different types of music, he's evolving as a singer-songwriter. Still, he's just one of those singer-songwriters that has a unique presence. Now, the band The Rave-Ups had actually come together in 1979 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. But by the early 80s, Jimmer Podrasky had moved to LA and put together a new version of the band. 1983, they put out an EP, 6 songs, I think, or mini album, I guess you can call it, called Class Tramp. And that's where I first heard them. I was flipping through the bins at, I think, Aaron's or Renee's Records. I came across it and I said, hey, this is pretty cool. I'm going to check it out. Took it home, and it's a blend of, punk rock and, maybe an early version of Americana. This is more along the lines of, at that point, I'm not going to compare them to the Replacements, like the sort of later period Replacements, the Sire years, but they were more like that. They were definitely a harder, edgier American band. They weren't trying to be British. And there were elements of Americana in that music, but it was also very strong, like punk rock. Now, that EP has not been released on CD at all. You can still find it out there on vinyl, but you can also buy it digitally through the Rave-Ups Bandcamp page. But their next album was really where they made their mark, and that is an album called Town and Country. Came out in 1985. Now, this was originally released, I think maybe this was on the Fun Stuff label, but Omnivore Recordings put it out on CD, added a bunch of bonus tracks, and this is really when they became what we now know as the Rave-Ups. This was a very, I guess you could almost say along the lines of like, Rank and File, where it's, definitely country influenced, and I'm talking old country, I'm not talking, they're not, recycling George Strait songs. I'm talking, like, a lot of the alternative bands were doing back in the 80s. They were mining American music, but also updating it and making it fresh. The song Positively Lost Me is on this. That became their hit, per se. Got played on a lot of the, new wave type radio stations. It ends up on some compilations out there, and I believe that the band performs that and another song during a bar scene in the movie Pretty in Pink. So if you're a fan of that movie, you have seen this band. In fact, I read a review. I was into the band because obviously with the EP, and then this album came out, loved it. And then I read in one of the LA magazines, the local magazines, that Molly Ringwald had joined them on stage, and they sang, I think they did a cover of Midnight Confessions, the grassroots songs. I mean, look, Molly Ringwald, I think every living male had a crush on Molly Ringwald. So at that point, it solidified my faith in the Rave-Ups, and it also made Midnight Confessions my favorite grassroots song. But I guess that's neither here nor there. But this is a great collection. It's pop, it's country, it's it's country punk, whatever you want to call it. Great collection, and Jimmer Podrasky as a vocalist and songwriter, he's a very unique character, and it really shines on this album. I'm surprised as heck that it didn't make it, but I think it's probably because it was on an independent label at the time, And, you know, if they had been signed to a major, and I'm sure they would have loved to have been signed to a major, but if they'd been signed to a major label, this would have been huge. But like I said, the Omnivore Recordings version added a bunch of bonus tracks. I mean, pretty much an album's worth of bonus tracks there. And that's a really great collection. The Rave-Ups Town and Country came out in 1985. Now, then they spent the next couple years in label limbo trying to get on a major label, and you know, they sort of fell out of favor per se. But then out comes the album The Book of Your Regrets, which is right there. That came out in 1988. Their second album. This is the first album for Sony or CBS, and it's edgier. It still has that rootsy Americana sound to it. But some of the songs, I'm going to have to admit that if the Plimsouls had kept going by 1988, they would have sounded kind of like this. I mean, where the Rave-Ups were a little closer to Americana and the Plimsouls were more rhythm and blues, I think that, you know, the more poppier sounds of the Plimsouls would have sounded a lot like the Rave-Ups on this album. Not to say that they sound like the Plimsouls, but it would have been in that vein. Book of Your Regrets, a great collection of songs. Didn't really catch on like it should have, because there's a lot of songs here that just would have sounded great blasting out of, college radio in 1988. But they did return in 1990 with an album called Chance. And that is another great collection of pop songs by Jimmer and the boys. Really absolutely wonderful. Now, by this time, there had been various members of the band that had, come and gone. But I think like the longest lasting members were Tim Jimenez on drums, Terry Wilson on guitar, and Tommy Blatnick on bass. But really, the Rave-Ups is really Jimmer's thing, But unfortunately, Chance didn't do well, even though it's fantastic. Now, this contains both albums on one. Both of these albums were released separately on CD, so if you can't find this, you're going to be able to find both of the albums separately on CD. And they're both fantastic, a mix of guitar pop, power pop, Americana, country pop. There's blues, there's folk. Now, since the group broke up, Jimmer Podrasky is out there, writing songs. He's still doing stuff. So he formed a duo, and they laid out a bunch of demos, and they released it as a group called the Lovin' Miseries. And the album is called Happy as Hell. And this wasn't meant for commercial release. I think it was just meant to go to radio stations to try to get airplay, to maybe build some kind of interest in the band. There are bands that happen to. Collective Soul is a band that just sent their demos to a radio station. It got picked up, and they became huge. They got signed to a major label stuff. So that kind of stuff was still happening at that time. So the Lovin' Miseries is a Jimmer Podrasky project after the Rave-Ups, and it features all new material there. And just it's interesting because it's edgier than the Rave-Ups, but it's still Jimmer. You can still hear that great songwriter, that unique songwriter coming out in these recordings. But then that's it for the Lovin' Miseries. Now, some of those songs actually ended up on Jimmer's solo albums, and he started releasing solo albums in 2013 with an album called The Would-Be Plans. And there it is there. And this is back to that great mix of pop and country and folk. Really, really fine collection of songs. I would say this might be my favorite Jimmer project after Town and Country, although I love Book of Your Regrets and Chance. Those are both great. But this was closer to Town and Country. Now, I'm not saying it sounds like that album, but if you really like Town and Country and you didn't like the more commercial guitar-y stuff on the Sony albums, this is a great album to get into. His next solo album came out in 2017 called God Like the Sun. And this is more of that great Jimmer Podrasky recordings. Lots of great songs. And some of these albums, he features Brian Whelan in them. And Brian is a man about town in L.A., appeared on a lot of records, very influential, even with the power pop scene. But this isn't power pop, but it's great pop. That's the thing. Jimmer can write a hook just as well as he can write some sad, sorrowful, country-esque song or folky song. It's very unique. And sometimes I think that uniqueness, we all want it. We all, oh my God, I want an artist that doesn't sound like this and doesn't sound like that. But then, people are always saying that. But then what happens is they hear an artist and they go, oh, well, that doesn't sound like this band or that band. I'm not going to listen to them. So, you just can't please everybody. Anyway, the next release he put out was an EP with Sid Straw. Now, that's digital only, but you can go to Jimmer and Rave-Ups Bandcamp page and download that. Some really good stuff on that EP. Now, his next album came out in 2019, and it is called Almost Home Again. Now, this is almost a transition album because it takes off where the previous two solo albums do, but then it does have some heavier moments in it. So he's not moving away from the country folk-esque part of his repertoire, but he's sort of bringing more things into the sound. And it's not as well produced as the other two albums, but it's just a great collection of songs, and there's an energy in there too. I mean, he's one of those artists that can write with emotion and perform with emotion. So you can actually, he's not just singing songs about, let's say loss or joy or whatever. If he's singing about those subjects, then you're feeling it in the music. But then after that album, Jimmer got the band back together, and the Rave-Ups returned in the year 2022 with this album on Omnivore Recordings, and it is called Tomorrow, and it finds Jimmer sounding as great as ever, the band sounding as great as ever, returning to that country-esque alternative sound, and it's really a fine album by Jimmer Podrasky and the Rave-Ups, but it's of course released under the name The Rave-Ups. And then as of now, that is absolutely it. There's no other recording. Now, there were a few Rave-Ups albums that were recorded but shelved. But, I encourage you to check it out. If you love things like Rank and File or maybe early Los Lobos, things like that, check out the Rave-Ups, a great LA-based singer-songwriter, Jimmer Podrasky. You can buy some of the stuff off of Bandcamp. So I'm going to put a link in the description box below where you can buy some Rave-Ups or Jimmer Podrasky. But instead of just sending you off into the wild, out into the wilderness to track down the Rave-Ups yourself, I put together a medley. And this features just a couple songs from each release, just little snippets, so it'll give you an idea of what to expect when you track down releases by the Rave-Ups, Jimmer Podrasky, and the Love and Miseries. So sit back, give this a listen, and I will see you on the other side.
They talk too much about peace. They talk too much about peace. They talk too much about the red and blue. As if the doodle nanny was a Yankee too. But if the doodle nanny was a commie too, it's true. There it comes now. You lost the law when you lost me. 6 paperback books and a dime tree, looking glass and a diamond ring. You lost me and you lost some dreams. standing right in front of me. Have you ever stopped to look at me? Something, anything, nothing. I could buy it anyway. She has good records, and I know if I'm outside the door too long, I'm gonna have to sing this song that goes ba 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 da 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 ba 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 ba. Take me away to another plane. Faith is just a hangman's rope. You might think I've gone insane, but I saw God go up in smoke. So I get high, that's a satellite mic, and I get high. I couldn't help but cry. All I wanted was to mean something. All I wanted was to mean something. Know that it's best to believe in God, in love, anything. I think that it's best if you leave it. 'Cause baby, I got me. Yeah, baby, I got me. It doesn't really matter to me, 'cause we see ourselves as what we thought we'd be. It could really happen to me, 'cause we dream this dream so hopefully today. All I know is all I see. If I had a home, I'd pray everyone would live like me. Everyone would see that I'm so happy to be me. I see it on your face right now. It doesn't matter what you say. Have I introduced myself? Look me in the face. Come on down to my car, babe. Come on down. Wish that you would love me, but I know now that you won't. You always think just what you need and say just what you don't. But you say just what you don't. You gonna roll. You gonna roll. You gonna roll. You gonna roll. Come along, I'll take you through the night. Hold my hand, don't look back, everything's gonna be alright. All you have to do is breathe. Come along, they're coming after me. They're coming after me. 1, 2, 3, 4. What is hope for? They're fixing for a fight.
Well, that's it. I hope this inspires you to check out the music of the Rave-Ups and Jimmer Podrasky. I really appreciate you taking the time to watch the video. Remember to like, comment, share, subscribe. Ring that bell for future notifications. And until the next time, remember me. I'm Steve Schnee, the CD Junkie.